Welcome, Kansas City and NFL draft fans. This is RGR Football, and this is the final event before our live streams kick off tomorrow night. Live during the draft, we will break down every pick for you here on RGR Football on YouTube. Every pick, every go, every situation, and every trade, we will have our evaluations. It's all based on our draft products, the Athletic Matrix, and the NFL Draft Guide from Rogue Analytics. You can get that at rogueapc.com. You can get that now. It's downloadable. You'll have it for the draft. That all leads up to this particular video because we do this each year, and it's one of the highlights of the draft season for us. We are going to sit down, Daniel Harms and I, with Ken Swanson and Maddie Lane from KCSN. Kansas City Sports Network does a great job, and even since before KCSN existed, they have put out a absolutely first-rate draft guide along with us. We've kind of mirrored each other, and so what we do is we work in parallel the whole draft process, and then we come together just before draft night, and we all get together on it and trade ideas, our takes, what maybe we hadn't considered, and we have a lot of laughs. That's what's coming for you today. Now, make sure you want to get our draft guide. As we said, you'll see it here on the screen momentarily, and go get KCSN's. They're different points of view. We come together in a lot of ways, but we have some differences as well. And I think they're both worth having open along with our streams while you watch the draft on television to get a full, encompassing look at what this draft is going to be for your back-to-back champion Kansas City Chiefs as they make the push for the three-peat. We're all focused on that. We're all trying to help you understand what the teams are doing and the teams understand what they should be doing, because it's all part of the bigger process of being an NFL fan and understanding championships. So without further ado, I hope you dig this one. It was a lot of fun for us. This is the NFL Draft Summit 2024.
Well, hey,
that's fair.
Well, that's a perfect way to start the show since I clicked go. Welcome in, everybody. It's the 2024 Draft Summit with everyone enjoying this draft season. Welcome. I'll do the bigger intro later, but you guys, you know all these guys because we do this every year and it's a lot of fun. Ken Swanson, Maddie Lane, Dan Harms, and me. Shout out to everybody else who couldn't be with us tonight, but hey, it's over. On, right? Like, everything's done, right? Or am I forgetting something that we still have to do?
I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I have something to do for like the next month or two. Like there's just like a piece of urge. Like it feels like you have to do something, right? But I think the hay's in the barn, guys.
Oh, it better be.
It's
close,
we don't need,
right?
There's not even a draft to happen, right? Like we just move numbers or names over from one sheet to another. It's all done.
We're just doing
Like
this for
that.
fun, right? Nothing else is happening. Like this is what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the way it started, though, right?
Oh man,
It's
Back in
true.
the day.
Brings
It
back
always
some-
starts that way. Who knows, man? So, I mean, we can go wherever you guys want to go, but like the biggest thing for me is the problem that I had this year is there's just so much that looks the same to me. There's too many wide receivers that aren't like outside of the three. It's like, okay, what flavor do you want? Like, I don't have like the hardest time I had this year was stacking the wide receivers.
I get it, man.
Yeah.
I get it. Like I think we could probably all give our consensus top 5 and they'd all be a little bit different. And that's with 3 players probably locked into the top 5, right?
Yes, absolutely.
I feel
Yeah,
like go. No.
I was just gonna say, like, I think the wide receiver position is probably like I don't know. It explains the whole draft class to me. It's like you like a lot of the guys. There's a lot of different flavors. You like a lot of people, but I found myself, and this was with the whole draft. It's a good draft class, but I found myself liking a lot of guys, not loving a ton of dudes. So when we do like our my guys for our draft guide every year, normally I get to like 15, then I have to trim it down. This year I got to 7, and I'm like, I don't know. That's probably like the last of the guys I feel like banging the table for where we're at. And then at the end of that, we're just like, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm fine with anything else that happens, but these are the 7 guys that I'd really argue for. It's just like, I like a lot of dudes, didn't love a lot of them out there.
That's
I'm
fair.
down.
I mean, like, it's starting to feel like that for a lot of these drafts. Like the last couple of them, I'm just like, yeah, these guys are really, really good. Okay. Like we're getting, at least at wide receiver, we're getting to a point where it's now they're doing 7-on-7, but before high school, and everyone's just getting really, really good. And they come into college, and like college is like, we're not doing anything with you. We're not developing you. Like, look at some of these players. Jermaine Burton, he played 4 years at 2 different schools, 2 SEC powerhouses. He didn't get developed at all. Like, he didn't do anything differently at those 2 schools. And I'm just like, well, apparently schools are very, very much, we're going to bring you in, you're going to do what you do well, and we're going to send you to the NFL. Like, it does not feel like a lot of these guys get the true development. And maybe that's just my own dumb opinion. I don't really care. That's kind of how it feels.
I one thing I've been kind of thinking about with the wide receivers, it's like I'm workshopping a little bit, but like, how we talk about pockets of players a lot, right? We talk about, and like the team, like the Chiefs talk a lot about like pockets of players at different positions, all that stuff. I almost think those pockets deserve their own segments in and of themselves now. And it's like for this, especially like for the receivers specifically, like I look at, okay, so if you take Xavier Worthy in round 1, which I would totally do, I do it in a heartbeat. But if you take Xavier Worthy in round 1, that probably keeps you from taking some of the day 2, day 3 vertical stretch type players in this draft too, right? So it's like, there's probably, if you wanted to get super cute and navigate the board, like you could probably take some of that in consideration too, right? Because like I think there's some interesting just vertical guys that you could potentially take in early day 3, late day 2 of the draft too. So it's like, I don't know, like how you navigate the board and how the Chiefs navigate the board specifically is going to be really interesting around the receivers, because like I think there's a million different routes, and like my overarching thing is just having. I think the Chiefs are walking into this with an open mind in just general, with receivers, with everything. It's like I could see him trading up, I could see him trading back, I could see him standing pat and making a pick. I could see a variety of scenarios, and like that sounds so blanket, but it's true in this draft. Just the way the pockets could fall, the way a blue chip or two could come up and or be available in a draftable range. Like there's no specific route that I see that just makes 100% sense, and like that's what makes this one so fun for me too.
It's gonna be a long night.
Oh,
I think we're gonna have a couple of zigs and zags, right? Like,
yeah.
I hope the only thing that I hope they don't do is stay at 32.
So you'd rather them move up or back?
Yeah,
just period.
Either way, get value one way or the other. Are there that many holes that you can't move up and reduce your total number of picks and get more on the field? Maybe, sure. Can you move back and like set yourself up for the next 2 seasons where you can really strike out at like the elite talent? Maybe that sets it up. I don't know. I could go either way.
For me, I mean, I kind of agree. I think this draft class, the way the whole thing settles down, it's like, yeah, there's probably like a top 15, top 20 that are separated. And then I think everybody else from that point on, 20 to 50, maybe some people even stretch out a little farther. It's relatively even, not splitting hairs, but like that guy, all those guys are kind of stacked together. So you're either moving up to get somebody that belongs in that top 20 group, or go ahead and move back, collect some extra picks, whether they're this year, next year, whatever it may be. And then you're now picking from essentially the same general pool of players wherever you trade back to that you would still be picking at 32. There's obviously a chance somebody slides or anything like that in a year, but no matter how many times I go through a mock draft exercise, whether I let the computer do it or I try to run it out myself, I rarely am sitting there at 32 and like, oh, wow, this is fantastic value that I'm staring at. It's almost always like, yeah, this is okay, but I would really love this guy 10 picks later, is almost the sentiment I get to every single time when I'm kind of going through the mock draft exercise.
I feel that.
I think it feels like every draft has a 20 to 50, right?
Yes.
Like that's the thing. It's like I feel like that range happens like every single year. I remember that exact phrase last year, and I remember this year before that. It was like, 20 to 50.
I think some get narrower, though. Some are a little narrower. I think this one's got pretty good depth to about 50. But, like, yeah, it's the same concept.
I feel like that speaks to the height of all these draft classes, right? Like, there are the elite players. And it feels like maybe it's getting a little bit smaller. The pool is getting a tad shallower. And obviously, when you're the Chiefs, like, and you're looking at from the Chiefs' perspective, you can't go and stick your hand in that pool all the time. It's not like you can go and get there. They were able to do that with Trent McDuffie a few years ago. I had him going 12 to the Vikings. Like, that's where I thought he was going. And then he slides down. They're like, okay, we're going to go and get one of these guys in the pool. But that doesn't happen very much. And now we're seeing, especially because back-to-back years, they're at 32. They've been picking the 30s. And it just puts that perspective of, well, these guys now at the top are really starting to separate themselves from everybody else. So, you could again go from 20 to 50 or in the 40s and really play with how you're going to fill out the roster. And that also plays into with this quarterback class, right? What team is going to be calling Kansas City at 32, maybe wanting to go get Michael Penix or a Bo Nix if they're still there? I mean, I dare I say a Spencer Rattler. If people want to go get him, that's going to be something that is intriguing to me specifically to watch, because I know people are going to be wanting the Chiefs to kind of make their pick there. But if you have one of these guys on the board and some of these teams want to come up and get them, I'm absolutely with you guys. Just trade back and see what you can get in this top 100 range.
I'm totally with you. Is there something, Ken, is there something you don't want to see them do?
There's, I don't know if there's a ton. I don't know. Actually, I don't know if there's a ton I don't want this to see them do. Like, I don't love round one corner all that much. Like, I don't know if I'd just be like super enamored with round one corner. I'd get it. And like, there's still players I like, but like, if I'm just talking, like, there's not like specific players that I'm just like overly worried about them taking. It's more just about like concept of positional, kind of stuff. Like, I don't love the corner idea, but I could probably live with it, right? But outside of that, not too much. Like some of the I know Maddie's probably going to say like the developmental tackles. Like, oh, if the Chiefs are taking tackle 7 or tackle 8, he's probably not going to love it. But for me, I mean, I know that's your take.
Yeah, Chiefs just took a developmental offensive tackle last year, and I'm not saying they shouldn't try to improve on Wanya Morris or anything like that, but to go right back to that well, but then do so, 64 picks earlier, or roughly, 60 picks earlier, that's a tough sell for me. So like guys like Kingsley Sumatea, and I'm not, a Guyton guy. To me, he falls into the same category. These guys are just so developmental. I don't know how much they're going to step in year one to even know how much more they need to go. Like, I think those guys are like a year away from knowing how far they are away from being ready to step in and start. I get betting on the talent. And if you didn't need them to start early, if you felt great about your ability to develop them behind, I don't know, let's say 2 really good tackles like the Eagles have going on, it sounds a lot better. But when you're looking at a team that's tried their hand at a few developmental guys and Niang and Wanya Morris, and you just haven't had one land, I just don't know how gung-ho I would be about using a round 1 pick on a guy that I think is a highly developmental tackle. And I know everyone's opinions on those tackles kind of disagree, right? Somebody might love them and think they're more ready than I do on day one, but like, that's kind of where I start to get a little like, I think this kind of developmental player belongs on day 2 more so than the end of round 1.
So that takes me to my plan. I'm YOLO on trading up to go get one of the tackles that are above those tiers.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I see that as priority 1, 2. You guys are on board with that?
For sure.
Okay, so I think there's like we've been throwing around a specific scenario that we really like. Okay, so if you look at Trent McDuffie and you remember the conversations around Trent McDuffie, it was, we didn't expect him to be here. Mm-hmm. They wasn't in their plans when they were walking in. It wasn't like the scenarios that they were running through. It was like, oh, Trent McDuffie's just there for us to go get. Let's just do that, right? Trent McDuffie, maybe he falls because he has historically short arms that typically, he's got little T-Rex arms. Well, Olu Fashanu has little tiny baby hands.
She's trying to hold a Whopper.
Yeah, he's just, he's that Kristen Wiig character.
Yep.
I found a dead cat on the side of the...
clipping that, by the way.
Yeah, I figured.
Perfect.
Matt, don't share it with Maddie. But like, it like I think Brett Veach has this thing which like blue chips with a small chip, right? There's a little crack in the armor, right? He'll take advantage of those. He's gonna bypass maybe some of those historical trends to say the tape's really good. I mean, it's not like Olu Fashanu has short arms. He's got requisite arm length. He just has tiny baby hands. So if for some reason Olu Fashanu falls to 16-ish, then just go try to go get him, because you can live with the tiny baby hands because the tape's really good. And the Chiefs aren't really in a position very often to be able to grab blue chip players because they're, to your point, they're going to be picking at 32 for the next decade. and they're going to shatter Tom Brady's record by the time Mahomes turns 34.
Ding, ding, ding.
But I I mean, be aggressive and just go get him, even though there's a small little outlier there that you have to accept. It worked the last time you did it. So like we've been talking about this, just like go get Olu. Just like go be aggressive and go move up for somebody like that if they just start falling.
Seattle is the team that I've been like, they're not winning this year. Their plan is for later because Geno's fine. I like Geno. He's not winning you a Super Bowl. The offensive line's young. The talent's there. They're brand new head coach. Why not? If you get someone fall, they're probably going to be more than willing to trade back. And if they're not, fine, whatever. You tried, right? That's the team where I'm like, that's probably the highest you can go, right? I think further than that, it might put them out of comfort zone and talking about multiple first-round pick area, which I don't know if you guys are comfortable with that. I'm okay with it because 32 and 32, whatever, doesn't bother me any much. And that's how I've kind of worked myself into that. But it definitely feels like one of these tackles is going to fall. And if one of them is going to, it's going to be the guy, like Ken said, with tiny baby hands. And that makes sense. Go get him.
Seattle's the trigger point for me too, only because I have a tinfoil theory there. I think Grubb needs a safety blanket, and I think Michael Penix might be the pick.
That's also
for
another thing.
For what you just said, right? And if they do that, that means another Washington Husky falls to me because the guy I want to go up and get doesn't wear knee pads. So, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So, like, I like his fit, especially in Kansas City because of the length, and I like Fautano because he's nasty. He can do it all. And if I really get in a pinch when Joe Tooney decides to retire, I kick him inside. I'm happy he's a clam. Am I nuts?
No.
Oh, is it? No. I love him. I think the more I watch Fautano, I like him more and more. I like the edge he plays with. I don't want to say it's definitely not dirty, but I like the physicality. I like that he's always looking to impose his will. And you're also looking at the potential of next year Trey Smith becoming a free agent, kind of being on the last year of the Trey Smith thing. And he's that guy for this offensive line. I'm a firm believer that every offensive line kind of needs a dog on it. And once you lose him, Trey Smith, you're probably not paying him what the top of the offensive guard market is right now. You're going to have to make your choice along that interior. So if you're losing that guy, I get somebody like Fautano getting to come in, kind of be that person. I think he has the requisite arm length that the Chiefs would be okay with out at left tackle. I do go back and forth on like his fit because he is still shorter and I don't know if he moves quite as well as they normally like his redirection and stuff like that, as much as they normally like, but he fits the profile enough that like, I'm certainly not ruling it out. And you want to make a trade up to get him, I would feel great about it.
Isaiah Wynn, kind of like frame wise, kind of reminds me of Isaiah Wynn, right? He's like a little bit on the shorter side, still has the requisite arm length. Like he kind of reminds me, and like I think Isaiah Wynn wound up kicking inside the guard, but I think he played some capable tackle for a stretch before he got hurt, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's a path there, like to a similar, kind of career path, right? But yeah, I mean, Fautano's the best five. He's just the best five. There's a couple of those best five types, right? Yeah. Like a Jackson Barton. Yeah. He's another one of those like best five type guys that like he's just a really good football player. Maybe we were having a conversation about Jackson Barton's fit. Like if the Chiefs, if he was BPA at 32, what do you do? And like I think the tackle, like that probably necessitates Jawan to left and Barton to right if you're going to keep him out there. Yeah. And I think the tackle tape's fine enough to keep him out there, but like, you might.
I feel like it's my duty to say that his name's Graham Barton, not Jackson Barton.
I was going to go. I thought he was like going for this split with Jackson Powers Johnson and Graham Barton, like he was saying the same player. I'm
you guys. So I looked. So here's the thing: I've done this multiple times this draft process because the Chiefs had a Jackson Barton and a Utah, and I actually
tackle,
went.
Right? I'm pretty sure he's a tackle too.
Yeah, I went and looked up to find out if Graham Barton and Jackson Barton were related like 3 months ago, just out of curiosity, because it was two offensive linemen trying to figure it out. I don't think they were. One's from
Jackson Barton's related to a linebacker though, that came out around the same time, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right. They're not related.
Okay.
Can confirm that. And they don't look a thing like each other.
Is that in the draft guide?
No, I didn't write those guys up. So I would have. The final line of the bio would have been not in any way, shape, or form related to Jackson Barton.
All right. I'm glad we've established that. That's good to know, because I was really getting in there saying you wanted them to draft Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm just like,
No,
yeah, I don't know about that one right there.
I don't like that one.
But this kind of brings me to something that I've come to terms with this draft class. Matt was talking about Trey Smith. So with interior offensive line starting to maybe creep up some of needs, how do you guys feel about that? Where does it put interior offensive line for you? Because obviously Nick Allegretti, who I loved Nick Allegretti. He's no longer on the roster. You don't have that sixth guy. You can just say, hey, go play. Like, just go do it, and you'll be just fine. And then the reality that Trey Smith is probably also not going to be in Kansas City after this year. How does that change or not maybe change your idea, because that was probably already on the horizon, but where does it push interior offensive line for you guys in this draft?
It gets tricky for me because I think they definitely should look to add interior offensive linemen. There's clearly a chance it's a pretty good class, I think, throughout the middle of this draft. If the value's right, you got to take the swing, especially if you think it's someone that fits with what you're doing and everything like that. My holdup is, well, the Chiefs don't have a ton of holes necessarily on their roster, especially in terms of starting on day one. There's enough positions that definitely could use some improvement to the starters, or at least somebody that's scheduled to kind of play a pretty hefty part of the rotation. An interior offensive line isn't one of those spots. So when we start talking like a top 100 pick, I know Kent's a little bit more okay with it. I get a little bit more uneasy without knowing the other moves that they made, without knowing if they have filled out some defensive line help. Defensive tackle, I think, still needs some bodies, and wide receiver, and there's clearly the offensive tackle hole. And hey, what's happening at tight end? There's enough holes for me to be like, I don't know if I love going interior offensive lineman in the top 100, but I would also get it if you're sitting there, in the 90s and you're like, wow, this guy's still here. I guess we have to pull the trigger now, or we couldn't look ourselves in the mirror.
I think the offensive lines, this is actually kind of one of the perfect representations of how I think my framing of conversations about the draft has changed for me a little bit as I've done this more. It's like what I think they should do, or what they should do, has been less hard line, where I've become more amenable to the ideas and concepts around what they will do, right? And this is one of them, because I'm not going to be surprised at all if the Kansas City Chiefs select an interior offensive lineman in the top 100 at all. I may not entirely love it, but I will understand it. Because this team has been so intentional about being a year ahead of potential needs. And when you look at the interior offensive line, you've got Joe Thuney making Jalen Hurts money on his contract next year. I don't know why. Sorry, I don't know why Jalen Hurts is catching a stray right now.
He's catching him everywhere. It's okay.
I guess. I'm not making any more jokes. I almost, he does have no rings though. But then you've got Creed, you've got Trey, right? They've got big decisions to make along their interior, and as of right now, they don't really have a tackle solution for 2025 either. So if they're going to go out and take an interior offensive lineman for 2025, I'm going to get it, because you want them in for a year. You want them hitting the ground running next year. And guess what? You insulated yourself. You've insulated yourself at a key position. You've got someone that could probably plug and play and give you good reps this year. So it's not the sexiest. It's not maybe in our heads, right? We're not all thinking interior offensive line's a top 3 need, but I'm not going to be disappointed if they do it, because I understand that, we spend so much time in 2024 and we get a little too trapped in 2024, and we should probably be thinking about 2025 a little bit more than we do just in general. And it's hard not to do that because we're so focused literally on the prospects in this draft class. So
hell, 26 too. I mean, think like a GM. You know what I mean? I'm totally with you. 100%. So let me put it to you this way, because I've been mulling this over as well. And I agree. Everyone wants to know, is the best player available? Are you drafting for needs? Do you have your guys? Brett Veach clearly has guys, right? That's fine. It's going to be the best player available at a position of need that is one of your guys. That's the way it really is when it all comes down to it, right? So for me, maybe the defensive tackles there. There's going to be value. Chris Jones is going to want Tavondre Sweat. I don't know if it's going to be in the fourth. I don't know if it's going to be late in the third. Like, you can make an argument that you might have to spend that on a defensive interior player. Okay, fine. So my question, because I can't, there's too many dudes that, like you were saying before, Manny, like that I like and I don't love, but I would certainly live with in the fifth and the sixth and the next Trey and the next LDT. Matty, who's your guy late on day 3 for the interior that you would like to see take that chance on?
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is where we start to get, you start to try to balance out guys that I like overall. So, and there's a lot of undersized, I guess, like centers. There's a lot of guys in this class that I like, but they have short arms and like they're kind of light and they just might be stuck at centers. There's like a handful of guys that I really like the tape that kind of fit into that mold. So it's a little tricky to find the guys I really like. But if we're talking middle of day 3, Hunter Norzad, offensive lineman out of Penn State. He played center for them this year. He was a tackle at Cornell beforehand. He transfers into Penn State. He's playing center. And there's some tape out there. If you can find the Illinois game, it looks like he's having a terrible game. And like, it looks really bad going against Johnny Newton. It was a hard spot. But then you watch him, he's desperately begging his guards to just show up one time to help him or a slant, and they just refuse to do it. And it makes him look so goofy out there. But then you watch against like Ohio State, or you watch some other games where there's not as much slanting, there's not as much stunts, and it's just one-on-one reps. He's winning. I think he's smart. I think he's got good range. I obviously know, you like a guy that has the versatility to play from tackle out to center in a pinch and stuff like that. So I really like Hunter Norzad. I think he's going under the radar a little bit for a guy that has that kind of versatility. And I think there's a couple bad games that look bad at first watch, but like, I really think the whole Penn State offensive line, especially on the interior, struggled mightily, like with their communication with one another.
Yeah, that's not out of the world. Ken, who would you pick?
So does Mason McCormick count as that? Because I'm not even sure he's a top 100. I'm not sure he's a day 3 guy anymore. And like,
Yeah,
so
I've got him in the third.
The
yeah,
Dane factor. Yeah.
Dane. So is Dane big on him?
He's got him in the top.
I don't-
Okay.
Does he? I thought he was talking crap about him on the podcast. Maybe that was someone else. I don't know.
Yeah, Mason McCormick, I really like him too. And he's had a really good process, but it's been pretty quiet for him the last month or so, where it's like, and it's not like it matters, but you do start to hear names start getting more closely tied to like a top 100 type. You start hearing more buzz more consistently, but I feel like he's had such a good process. He might wind up in the top 100 for, he's had as far as like athletic testing, he did really well there. I think he had a great, Shrine Bowl, right? Which he got a chance to play up against, top level talent. He showed some flexibility to play multiple positions. He was one of the better offensive linemen at the Shrine Bowl when he was there. You see Jim Nagy saying he apologizes for missing his evaluation on him for the Senior Bowl, stuff like that. Like, if he wound up being a top 100 pick, I wouldn't be surprised. If he's there at 131, if he's there at 110, I'm trading up.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to, if he's there at 110, I'm probably taking 131 and packaging another pick to try to get him up.
I like the plan. Like, especially on day 3, if you like somebody, go get them. Just
for sure.
Somebody stands out in any way that isn't like the meh. Go get them. Dan, who is it for you?
I'm trying to figure out where Brandon Coleman falls in all this. Like,
yes, falls
because, and that's another one of those players. Is he going to be on day 3? And if he is, yes, please, because that's going to be your physical guy. If Trey Smith isn't there, you're just going to kick him inside and say, hey, go knock the snot out of somebody. You guys, I'm sure, no, you guys did, but if you guys are watching and you didn't see him play with Steve Avila, who was kicking the snot out of people and with the Rams this past year, go back to 2022 and watch these guys together, because he played tackle for them and he has experience there. He can kick inside. This is a guy that, again, I'm trying to figure out where his range is, because is he going to be in the top 100? Is he going to be on day 3? If, again, like Ken said, if he's in the beginning of round 4, starting to fall a little bit there, go get him. I think that would be a very fun player to have on this team because of that, not just positional flexibility, but I think that they operate a little bit better as an offensive line with a little bit of nasty, a little bit of grit to them as well.
I love Brandon Coleman. I'm not 100% sold that he even has to go in on the inside. Like, I think it'll probably depend on which team he goes to, right? But like especially if you go back to 2022, I didn't hear what the specific injuries were, but they're like the rumors are he played a lot of this past season with some injuries and it led to some like inconsistency, I guess. If you go back and watch him like from 2022, and as we were all living and dying by what the Horned Frogs were doing that year with a lot of fun, I remember like, yeah, he looked phenomenal. And so like, yeah, I'm not sold he has to kick inside, but either whether he does or doesn't, again, we talk best five all the time. He might be one of them for any team. And like, I love him. I don't know why there's a little bit less hype on him. You watch him down at the Senior Bowl. I think he kicked it. They played him at guard and tackle a little bit down there. So I don't know. He's one of my favorite guys. I think he got a my guy for me in the draft guide as well. And if not, it was just afterwards that he kind of would have fallen into that spot for me. Kent's giving me the questionable eye right now, so I guess it was
I don't know about that.
I'm looking now. I'm trying to find out.
It could have been right after. I could have went back through the interior guys right after because he was definitely one of the later interior offensive line guys I got to. So it could have been after the guide came out. But like on my own personal board that's in the back of the guide and stuff, he's definitely a lot higher there than I think he is in the draft guide for a lot of the same stuff that Dan was saying.
Yeah, Maddie's a liar.
It happens.
Can't confirm.
It's been known to happen.
No, the funny thing is like, no, he was literally talking about Brandon Coleman this morning. As far as just like a day 3 tackle type, right? Just some of those like day 2, day 3 type targets at tackle when we were kind of going through some stuff. So like, I mean, I think kind of speaks to where I think Maddie stands on him as far as where he could potentially play. But yeah, kick inside if you need to, right? So, but yeah, there's a couple of those options out there in the outside the top 100 to go grab a developmental tackle type.
Mine's way outside. So feel free to call me a lunatic. It's fine. But I watched I got Holy Cross at like 3 a.m. one night 6 weeks ago, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do one more dude. And maybe I was delirious. I don't know. But I saw a little bit from time to time, especially when he has to redirect his hands and re-anchor. I like CJ Hansen as a lighter athletic dude that reminded me a little bit of Mitch Morse back then. And I might have been just stir crazy late at night, but like, that's the dude. Like if he shows up in the 6 and they're like, hey, we're going to take him and see what he can do. Like, that's the guy that I'd be happy with.
Well, he's like he's one of those bigger, he's like kind of like one of those bigger Creed Humphrey type interior players too. So like he's built very similarly. He's a little bit on the lighter side. But yeah, I think he moves pretty well for his size. Like, I mean, like I think this is a pretty good moving interior offensive lineman. So like, from a developmental perspective, like, yeah, I don't know where he's gonna go. Didn't the Chiefs bring him in for a 30? Am I crazy?
If they did, I didn't see it.
Maybe they didn't. I could be wrong on that. I mean, Matty was wrong on Brandon Coleman. I'm about to be wrong on CJ Hansen being a 30 visit.
So we're nailing it. Guys like that, just guys that have a trait or two that stick out for you, or even a specific skill that sticks out to you when you're talking about guys later on day 3, like they really pop, they really stick in you. So if there's a guy like you're seeing specific things you like that you think Andy Heck's going to come in, be able to mold that and pull a little bit more out of it, I 100% get that. He came late to the shrine. Elijah Klein out of UTEP. He came late to the shrine, and Craig and I weren't even paying attention to him when we were watching. But all of a sudden, we're like watching from a little bit away, and there's this new guy that we hadn't seen, different helmet, that's blocking guys well outside his frame. Just the flexibility he's able to block guys with, and the core strength. I'm like, very interesting. I'm gonna have to go back and watch him. And I've gone back. We've done a little bit more. And like Klein would be a guy, if we're talking like late day 3, you're pulling him in round 6, round 7, and nobody's talking about him. He's a guy that has my interest just for based on essentially 1 to 2 things that really pop. I don't think you get that many interior offensive linemen that can show that kind of flexibility, really block with their center of gravity outside, their base. And he just showed that for me. It's like, I think there's something to work with there. So guys like that, Hansen, I 100% get it and stuff like that. So there's plenty of guys that's what you're looking for. And
if you didn't trust Maddie,
but I do.
Fair.
You should trust Maddie.
There you go.
But if you want to be validated, if you want validation, Duke Manyweather, April 16th. This is like 5 days ago. Draft sleeper Elijah Klein, UTEP. Attaboy.
Go.
Boy, Maddie. No, I remember we were at the Shrine Bowl. And like Maddie was like, "Who is this kid?" So
he showed up late. Wasn't on my sheet. I didn't know what to do with it.
He was like a Saturday ad or something crazy like that too. Like he was a late ad. But yeah, Good catch, Maddie.
I like it.
Well done. I hope
Thank
one
you.
of those guys ends up there. Dang.
I bet you. I see. Like that'd be my preference. Like I
Yeah.
feel like they've done pretty. They've had good interior offensive line evals. You know, like they've done a good job evaluating those guys, right? So, we'll call Darian Kennard a tackle so that doesn't continue but we'll just keep them out there so like the hit rate continues to be strong for interior
Okay.
guys. But no, I think a day 3 interior offensive line, the way they've been able to develop makes sense, but I could see them valuing it higher. That's all. Just like that's just, their MO.
Yeah. There's one guy that I didn't get to see, and I should go to Emory probably. Did you guys see the Ben kit? The kid from British Columbia?
No. Manu?
Okay. No, I'm looking for his name. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Never mind. Enough of the interior
No.
dudes that'll never play.
I don't know what we could glean from Canada college football tape either.
I don't know either.
It's the
just, hey,
workouts that are probably going to matter for that guy anyway.
he's scared of the wider field. I don't know. So just to like reinforce that I'm a jerk,
Uh-oh.
I think they need an edge. I'm not happy. I'm just not happy. I see a lot of people telling me to be patient. I get a lot of that feedback, and I'm just not. Am I an ass, or like how important is edge to you guys in this class?
Kansas homer.
Yeah, I'm here.
No, I get like if people are is it Felix specifically for you that like people
No.
are calling you a hater or just period?
Just period, because I'm like, I think they need to add to the position group, period.
I go back and forth on like how big of a priority. Like I think it's just all like if the right guy's there, sure. But this group is largely back from last year. It was a pretty productive group. They're not going to have Charles Omeni for the first half of the season, right? And like that's going to be like difficult. I wouldn't mind more juice up the arc, for sure. Like I think they should add something along the defensive line to help give a little bit more juice in the pass rush. Like I'm sure they're going to hope Tershawn Wharton has a little bit more from the interior. Charles Omeni looked great when he was on the field at the beginning of or at the end of the season last year. You're essentially banking on the development of George and Felix to give you any improvement on last year right now. And so like, I get wanting more, but that's, they're going to have a better pulse, I think, on whether or not those guys are going to develop at all. Right.
Yeah.
But if they did it, like that's one of those, like, I'm not going to be mad if you take a defensive lineman early. If they take Marshawn Nealon at 64, I'm not going to be disappointed. I don't think that helps the pass rush all that much. Like, I don't think he's like a game changer pass rusher, but it's going to help up front. Like, it's going to help build depth. It's going to help build, playable bodies and versatile pieces to your defense. So, like, I don't know. I stay flexible depending on who falls.
For me, I was kind of lockstep with you, I think, until they signed Mike Dana. Until bringing back Mike Dana, not that he changes the entire outlook of the position or anything like that, but it provides a safety net of a floor. You now don't have to rely on Felix or another second-year player to come in and eat a lot of snaps to start the year while Omenihu's still working back from injury. You're not relying on the Felix Malik Herring rotation across from George Karlaftis now. I think that's big. Yeah, it's only a 2-year deal, and Omenihu's contract's coming up. So, like, I still think they can definitely add a defensive end. I won't be mad if they're sitting there at 32 and they say, hey, there's a defensive end here. It's the best player on our board, bar none. Let's just take him. Like, let's just bring him in. We're going to have a need within the next 2 years at this position anyway. Why not just do it now? I fully get it. I do think that they protected themselves a little bit by getting a Dana back. And he's a guy that provides a floor. You hope you can survive until Omenihu comes back. You hope Felix makes these jumps. So I get it. I can live on both sides of this. I'm going to straddle the line now. Beforehand, I was big time, like bring a defensive end in, but like now I can just kind of sit right here on the line. I can lean one way or the other and wait it out. I can be patient now that they at least have some competent starters, I think is more of where I land.
Where does your senatorial race begin, Senator?
Exactly.
Well done. Well done. I like it.
If they trade back, I'm all in. Go ahead, draft yourself a defensive end on day 2, and I'm in. I don't know if I could like be really happy about George Karlaftis, first round pick, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, first round pick, and then the 3rd year in a row they do it again. Like that's like we have failed. Like we don't know what we're doing. We're kind of just throwing bodies, which I understand to a point if you're continuously drafting those guys in like the top half of the first round. We're sitting here at the end of the first round and just throwing stuff at a wall at defensive end, and nothing's really sticking to it a high enough.
Yeah.
A high enough ceiling. So it's like one hand, yeah, they probably still need it in the future, and on the other hand, I'm just like I'm tired of it. I'll be honest. It's more of a frustrating thing. Like I know that they probably will need it, like you guys were talking about in a year or two. They're gonna have to get someone there. But it's just George Karlaftis. I like what he's done. I'm wanting more. You know, we're going to get to see more from Felix maybe this year. That's going to be more of what I'm looking to see because Mike Dana, I think, has done a really good job of just. I think last year was really good. Like he was a very good player last year, above replacement type player. And I hope you get that again from him this year because that will help stabilize everything. And if you don't get that, that's where we're going to see, okay, maybe they should have taken a defensive end at some point. But I'm also more on the I believe Felix can be more than what they have at Pat as a real legitimate pass rusher on the outside. I believe that, but obviously we'll find out if that's true or not. So it's a like Matt said, it's a give and take on one side or the other side. It's hard to be mad if they draft someone, but part of me will just be like, we're back here again, you know.
I think, and like I think edge is one of those positions where for me, like you can a couple of things. Drafting edges in the 30s is really hard.
Yeah.
And if you look at the success rate of drafting edges in the 30s, it's not great. That's why like George Karlaftis at pick 30 is a slam dunk. That is a fantastic home run pick. He's been extremely productive over like I think his production's already essentially exceeded what most picks at the edge position in the 30s typically have from like a sack perspective. Like I know sacks are not everything, but there's something. There's still something of value here.
Sure.
And benchmarking sack production for a George Karlaftis versus edges taken in that range, slam dunk already. Look at Odafe O has been in the league for 3 years, and he's got 13 sacks to his ledger, right? So if you're like, it's really hard to draft edges. It's really hard to find successful like blue chip players at that position because the blue chip players go in the teens or higher, right? When it comes to that specific position. So it's not a position that's going to play 100% of the snaps either. So like if they're continuing to cycle through a premium position at the bottom of the first round, I'm not going to get too upset. Like it's just because you've got to have more than two bodies there. You've got to have a stable of players. You've got to continue to have enough. Like you can never have enough of those guys. A fresh front is always going to be valuable, right? So I can live with taking another defensive end if they want to do it. Like if Jared Verse for some reason fell down to like pick 32, like I'm gonna be doing backflips for something like that.
That's fair.
Even like a Chop Robinson. Like if they took Chop and said, hey, you know what, let's get a great first step that's gonna threaten up the arc a little bit. He may not be able to turn the corner once he gets there, but there's gonna be some speed to kill, right? Some speed to burn and kind of just change your rush paths a little bit, right?
Boy, you want an indictment on last year's first round pick. Draft Chop Robinson
I
at
know.
32, though.
Well, I think but like that's the thing. I think there are some, depending on who it is or what. Like if they traded up for an edge, that means Felix stinks, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Their evaluation is done, and they know what
They
have.
don't feel good about where it's heading, right? So, but like if there's value that falls at 32, I don't think it's an indictment on Felix. I think it's just taking another good position. Maybe Chop. That's a good point, though, Maddie.
I mean, as long as he doesn't come in contact till he's 3 yards deep, he's fine.
And he doesn't have to play rundowns. Yeah, just fine.
Well, he doesn't. He plays 3 steps a game, right? That's okay. It's fine. I don't know. I'm picky. Sorry. It's the power edge thing. It drops off quick, and I feel a little silly because I'm generally one that is very, very cautious about significant injuries. But folks, you haven't seen my draft board yet. It comes out tomorrow, but Latu's at the top of my edge draft board because, yeah, he could have an injury, and no, he doesn't deliver power, but he's going to whoop your ass in his hands, and I'm not worried about it in the end of being some kind of productive. Whereas Verse, if you can handle power, unless he has a good coach year one, I don't know that you have to worry about a whole lot more.
Well, Latu tested better than I think people thought he was going to too. Like he kind of like there was some like they're not the same player build or anything like that, but there was a little bit of Derek Barnett vibes right before the testing. Right, it was like really productive college player, really good college player. Is the athletic testing going to be enough? And Latu's his testing was it exceeded expectations, I think. So like if everything clears on the medicals, I saw today that the betting favorite right now for pick 8 is Latu.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
he has climbed
I
up to
didn't
the
know
betting favorite.
Wow.
And that would probably be defensive player 1 off the board.
Yes.
It's got to be, right?
So like, if the medicals are clear, like I get it cuz like there's a lot of good on that tape. So
He's so tricky for me because I agree. The hands phenomenal. The pass rush's technique, setting stuff up throughout a game, great. Like one of the best you're going to see in any prospect coming out. Like he's up there with the Bosa's in terms of his hand technique coming out. Now I don't think he's the same level of athlete though, and like I think it even played out. Yeah, he tested a little better than we thought, but the jumps were still pretty middling to disappointing. The 3-cone, 709, like we're like right there on the threshold. Like we did just enough on the 3-cone. The testing was fine. It better than I think some people thought. It's like I just struggle. Like I even removed the injury because I don't know anything about it. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea what's going on here. And 2, I'm not in the room with them. Like, I don't know what anyone's saying.
Sidebar,
So-
like we're kind of with you on that, Ryan, because like the way we do the draft guide too, right? We don't factor in medicals and we don't factor in character when we
Psych.
are doing our grades. It's just
Mhm.
not fair because I'll tell you, there are players like we there are some players that have very known medical and very known off field, but the truth is, like there are players I know that have off field and medical that aren't talked about as having off field and medical in public, right? How is it fair for us to knock one guy that we know and knock others that we don't? It's not fair for us. We're not NFL teams. We don't have access to the scans from Indy, right? So we don't take those into consideration as we are doing our evaluations because it's just not fair. There's not a level playing field, and there could be some bias that enters your grading scale if you aren't careful because you're not going to know every medical and every off field. So sorry that for the sidebar, but like that's
it's
just kind of
perfect.
like philosophically, it's not it's not fair for us to just do that across the board, and you might Dane Brugler has a better pulse on that probably because you'll see some of the notes in there like, oh,
I want to know what the
interesting.
slush fund is that Dane has working about how people, is it orderlies? Like, is it the janitor? Like, who gets him this information? Dane, I want to know.
Come on and tell us.
Yeah.
He probably knows
Please.
all the doctors in every single facility. Like he just knows all of them and he calls them up. Like I don't know what it is, but the stuff that he's
He
tapped
uncovers
into
more.
is pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
I don't know.
Oh, man.
Some of those things, and you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you said that because like I don't go into that enough probably for the folks that watch this channel or get the guide or anything else, right? But you can't know enough to be certain. So just cut it out and keep it to what you can. It's that old law thing, right? I can't convince you what's real. I can only show you what I can prove. I can show you. So that's what you stick to.
There's another piece of this too, right? So when we're doing our draft coverage and Keely Ringo goes Thursday and Friday without being picked, I don't know if I really want the Chiefs to pick Keely Ringo at this point. Keely Ringo, the tape, like I think we had him top 30 in the draft guide last year, right? From a tape perspective. But if a guy that talented and with good tape is falling all the way to day 3, like I don't know how much I'm really hammering the table for a guy specifically like that to be on my team because the entire league has passed on him multiple times for a reason. And at that point, it's like the league's telling you something's up. The entire National Football League is telling you something's up. I don't know if I'm really excited at this point, right? It's not great value. I mean, and how often do those guys that just tank really work? Like some of them do, I'm sure. But like, how often is, a top 30 player tape getting taken in round 4, round 5, like really moving the needle and really living up to the expectations you have for that player. Something's happening there behind the scenes that you don't know until draft weekend. So
You're absolutely right. And I always joke. Let's go. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just gonna say, I'm just gonna add on real quick. When it's something you know about, I feel more comfortable. Like if we're sitting here saying this guy has an injury history, right, and then he starts to fall. While we don't know the extent of the injury, you at least have why he's falling. It makes sense. You can rationalize it. So once he gets taken by your team, you can sit here and go, well, hey, they clearly think the injury issue is not a problem. You know what it is. Or if there's an off-field thing and they take him, they sat down with him, they talked it out, they think this won't be a problem going forward. So when you know what the issue is, it's easier to get over it. When you have no idea, when a guy that you just have graded as a round 1 player and all of a sudden he's there in round 5 and there's no rationale for why, you're kind of like, why does nobody want to talk about this? What's going on here? Then I think you get a little bit more uncomfortable trying to root for your team to take them. It's like, I think that's why it comes to extra layers. And like Keely Ringo, it wasn't until like the day of that he finally got drafted that the agents come out, we had a rap sheet or Schefter comes out and said, he's falling because of X, Y, or Z or something like that. But like when you just don't know until the day of, that makes me a little nervous.
I'm totally with you. And I do joke quite often that I'm waiting for the next Justin Houston situation where somebody who is that elite does something stupid and I take advantage of it, right? I'm not sure Sweat is that guy, but in related to how things fall and impact where they go, I wanted to shift it too, because I just wanted to ask you guys straight out, because I still haven't made up my mind. The board comes out tomorrow, folks, not tonight. Where do you have Mims on it? Because I just can't decide where I'm comfortable with him. And that's not obviously off the field, but the injury thing is significant and the lack of snaps is significant.
No, it's a great question. And like, as we remove ourselves a little bit, like, you try to get a 4-game sample size on a player, right?
Sure. When
you're trying to watch tape, if you get 3 or 4 games on a guy, you're happy.
So you've seen all his snaps.
I know. That's pretty much it. So like if you watch the tape itself, like I think the tape is first round gradish. I think it's, hey, this guy has a chance to be, he has the talent to be one of the best players at his position in the National Football League when it's all said and done. Knowing that, like, so like when we're looking at from when you're looking at it from like a film perspective, like I think he justifies, like if he's there at pick 32, I'm going to be happy because the Chiefs got a guy that could potentially, be a franchise left tackle. Now, if he's sitting there at 45, it's kind of like the red flags start, they start going up a little bit, right? So where he stacks for us just kind of because of our process, like I think we have him in the top 25-ish, somewhere in that range. Let me look. I think he's sitting like 19-ish somewhere on the board for us. Like I think he's one of the guys that got a first round grade for us, like a low first round grade. I mean, I'd feel good about taking him at 23 or at 32. But I'm not going to, I will absolutely acknowledge that there are legitimate concerns about the medical that could be, but again, like if the Chiefs are taking him at 32, that probably means they're comfortable. I mean, some teams probably weren't, but it means the Chiefs were at least comfortable with it. Right. So, tape's good. The tape's promising. It's just so promising. I think that's probably the best word. It's just, there's so much promise on tape.
He's so hard for me, like just to figure out what to do with it. I'm with you. I am this first round graded guy. I know none of the information of the injuries, just like the rest, like we've been talking about. But one, you can't ignore that the injuries keep happening. You can't even go work out at the combine without having to leave and pull up with being injured. Like that matters, and like that's got to factor into a team taking him. Thankfully, when I'm giving out a grade like this, I'm not having to draft them and pay him millions of dollars. So like I can just give the grade based on the tape that I see. And here it is. I get the end zone view. I'm looking at this guy that's 350 pounds who's got a V-shaped body in his pass stance, which is just
250.
Freakish, which is just freaky. And then you watch him get in a 3-point stance and how low he puts his ass to the ground at his size. I'm just like, nah, I don't even like, if you can get out of this stance with any kind of pace, this is good. And then you see him explode out of that stance. I'm like, nope, we're done. I don't need to watch anymore to tell you that this guy, if he's healthy and has a coach that knows how to coach football, is going to play in the NFL. I don't need to see more than just one step out of your stance from there. But then you go back and you do watch, like, okay, that's a lot of experience, but he kind of has a good idea what he's doing. Like, he's not completely raw. He doesn't not understand the position. He just hasn't played very much because he's been hurt. So like, I really like him. if the Chiefs pass on him at 32, I have no problems in my mind saying, well, they must have not loved his medicals. Or if they even trade up to take him, my exact thought is they checked out his medicals and they loved it. So like, I'm fine either way with him, just because like as soon as I saw him pull up at the combine, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this anymore. Like, I just don't know what to do. So we're going to let that one just play out the way it plays out.
Didn't it come out that he did the 3-cone and it was
He
like a
did.
freakish three
It
cone,
was-
but he actually didn't do it? It was
Oh,
like
yeah.
I think they misidentified the number. Like I think he did it, but they wrote down like one of the top numbers to ever be recorded at tackle ever.
I thought like someone confused his 3-cone with somebody else's, and like he actually didn't run the 3-cone at all, is what I thought happened.
Maybe he didn't. I don't
could
know.
be wrong, but like it was like, what didn't he just pull up on his 40 time like 5 seconds ago?
Well, I've said it before. I think he has, if not the best, pass sets in this entire draft class. I fully believe it. It's not like Matt was talking about. It's insane what he's able to do at his size. And like I said, I don't know about the injuries. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. All I know is that when he's playing on the field, he knows what he's doing from a pass protection standpoint. And I think that there is enough to work with from a drive block standpoint, get to the, double to the next level. You can work with some of the zone stuff here. He's probably learning more about exactly where he needs to be in his run blocking and less about how to work in an offensive line pass protecting. That I would love to see him in Kansas City, but they've already made the points about, well, they have far more information. So if they go up and get him, they know what they're doing. And if they don't, then they obviously don't feel comfortable there. So we've seen the Chiefs take players that have some obviously questionable medical stuff, but they also have waited on some of those players too, Trey Smith being the name one. So at the end of the day, like everyone's saying, I'm going to trust what they do with a guy like Amarius Mims. But when it comes to my own evaluation, I have him as, a top 21 pick. He's 21 on my board. Like I think he's incredible.
Amarius Mims did not run the 3-cone, and I'm trying to figure out who they confused with.
It would have been whoever was right in front of him alphabetically or behind him. Like it was, I think I don't even think they confused him. I think they just inserted the number in the wrong spot. And I think that's all.
That's hilarious.
Do you guys know Amarius Mims' hand size off the dome by any chance?
Isn't it massive?
It's ridiculously insane. It's like 11 something.
It's 11 and a quarter. It's 11,
11 and a quarter. Yeah. It's
Can you give some to Olu?
That's
give
seriously,
Olu
give
cut
Olu
off some
1
of your
inch.
fingers.
Just give him 1 inch. Gosh, that's ridiculous.
You guys know something we haven't actually in depth talked about yet is the weapons in this class, right? We've kind of stayed away from it, and that's really where everyone wants to talk about. Even Matt was talking about tight end earlier, right? Like some people are really freaking out about the tight end class or for the tight end position for the Chiefs. So obviously wide receivers happening. We know that. If you look at 2025, there's 2 receivers signed contracts in Kansas City, something like that, 2 or 3. Like that's it. It's not looking good. So the philosophy here, right? Double dipping. How do you guys feel about double dipping at wide receiver with, a 5th and then a 7th? You don't have a 6th round pick and you only have one, you have 2 5th round picks. So how does that work in your guys' process with, do you think they need a double dip, or do you think maybe a guy like Hollywood Brown is going to play one full first season, get an extension? Probably not going to happen, but I want to know what you guys think about double dipping for this wide receiver class. Obviously it's really, really talented, really, really deep. And how would you go about doing that?
I'm pro double dip for sure. Like I like the idea of a 2nd round pick and a day 3 pick, and I think it's, what we were talking about a little earlier is just like pockets of types, right? Like, do you try to wait and see if you can catch value on a vertical stretch type player later in, day 3, one of those bargain bin vertical stretch type players, and then just take, take Jalen Polk at 64 or something along those lines. Not 32, I don't think. And I love Jalen Polk. Jalen Polk's my guy. I don't know if I love it at 32, but like just doing something like that, right? It's like, I think fitting types. Like if you take a day 3 receiver, there's some return game value to him, right? gold out of Oregon State, right? Like that's one of those guys that like he's got the return ability, he's got some gadget stuff, he's got some speed to be a stretch player. He's made some plays down the field there at Oregon State. So it's like there's your bargain bin vertical guy, and then taking, someone that maybe works a little bit more underneath or not necessarily as vertically minded, in round 2. Like I'd love to double dip in this class, especially since like it is such a deep group and there's still value to be had in round or in day 3, honestly. So like there's some good players there.
I'm pro double dip at the wide receiver spot, and you can even throw a tight end in there too. Get weapons in there, see what happens. Just flood the pass catchers, flood the offensive weapons right now. I think your defense is young, not set, but there's enough talent on all 3 levels of your defense that is young, under contract, that this would be a year that I think you can try to throw numbers at the offensive side of the ball and see what happens. Yeah, I am pro double dipping at the wide receiver spot. Especially, I'm not opposed to going round 2, round 3 at wide receiver. Honestly, if I'm going to be clear about it, like if you have to miss out on round 1, you don't get that complete wide receiver, a guy that you think in day 1 can step in, attack all 3 levels, do a lot of different stuff, but is a little bit more, I'm not to say scheme specific, but role specific. Talking about like a guy like Jalen Polk or Javon Baker is kind of like my version of Jalen Polk. I think for Kent, I really like Javon Baker. I don't think he can do everything though as a rookie. So you want to come right back in round 3 and also get another guy there because you don't actually trust Kadarius Toney, unlike what Brett Veach may or may not say during pressers, right? I fully get that. I'm on board. Or you do it in day 3. So very pro double dipping at wide receiver. The more, again, we talk about like doing the mock draft exercises, I don't love wide receiver in round 1. The more those play out, I just think the guys that are usually left once you get past the Brian Thomases, I don't know about you guys. I'm just not the biggest AD Mitchell fan. So I have a hard time when he's the pick at 32. Like that's the struggle for me. So I would rather just wait until round 2, double, get my first of my 2 wide receivers there, do it later. Like I think it's a good wide receiver class to do that. Just go full Green Bay Packers, right? That's what we're asking for you. Go full Green Bay Packers at it and see what happens.
It worked in a deep class last year for the Packers.
I was literally about to say, this is another one of those classes where you go right to that point and you get some of those players. Like I'm looking on day 2, like I love Javon Baker too. I may be on an island with this because I think he's probably going to be closer to what we see Amon-Ra St. Brown in the NFL than what he is used at in college on the outside of vertical weapon. I love the way he plays in space. Put him in the slot and let him go to work. Like I think that's what he's going to do best. So you could match that with a guy like Roman Wilson on day 2, who's been more of a vertical player, but showed more ability as an actual route runner playmaker at the Senior Bowl, which I loved watching him do that. But there's so many different flavors like we talked about. I think one of my favorite things to do would also be to double dip on day 2. Like I think Matt's idea of taking 2 receivers on day 2 is a very interesting one. And like you guys were saying with the Green Bay Packers stuff, I'm looking at my big board right now, and from the top of the 2nd all the way through to the 5th round, I have 0 spaces. There's wide receivers everywhere. Like they're all in there. There's not one gap. Like I just have them everywhere. So, I mean, Jalen McMillan is an underrated guy in this class too. He's another one of those slot can probably win from the outside a little bit in the NFL, not straight vertical speed guy, but I love also Johnny Wilson. I'm also like, bring me Johnny Wilson and just let him work. You want to make him tight end? Go for it. See what happens. And just get guys that move differently at their size and see what you can make of it. So it's full everywhere. And I was talking with some guys yesterday about Brendan Rice. And Brendan Rice is like Demarcus Robinson. It's just a little nastier, right? Everyone misses Demarcus Robinson's in terms of what he would do for this offense. Like everyone misses that kind of big-bodied outside guy who isn't going to run the biggest route tree. He's going to go out there, he's going to block, and every once in a while he'll pull a double move on someone and he'll get you. And I think that what Brendan Rice does in this offense would be actually used as more of a red zone threat. But I think that he's like I said, there's just so many different things. So I like the idea of using this like the Green Bay Packers did and just saying, screw it. We've made a mistake of our wide receiver room. Let's try and fix it right now.
I'm doing a quick look at all the receivers here just from the last few years, and I think the most receivers that have ever gone in the top 100 is 17.
Sounds right.
Down.
And so if you're looking at that and you're looking
and you know the crazy part about that? Sky Moore was wide receiver, I believe, 15 in the year he was taken. And that was at what, 54? So even if you continue back, only a couple wide receivers went after that before you got to the Chiefs. It's weird. In strong wide receiver classes, 15 wide receivers going in the top 64 picks is not pretty common, but like it's happened. But then you extend that out to pick 96 going forward after that. It seems like only 2, 3, 4 more wide receivers at most are going after that. So like it really slows down. And that's happened in a couple different strong wide receiver classes. Just a weird trend I saw when looking around at it.
So wide receiver 17 for us right now is Javon Baker.
That's too low.
Yeah, for you.
I've got him at 10. So
yeah, for you. But if you look at like the names after him, right? Jermaine Burton, that's character.
Too low.
But that actually probably is too low. Jermaine Burton, Brendan Rice, Malik Washington, Jamari Thrash after, right? So look at that top 20.
Yeah.
If you're telling me you can you're probably going to be able to catch one of those guys at 95 too. So,
Jamari Thrash at 95. Come on down.
Sure. Jamari, I mean, there's a lot, but like Roman Wilson, if he falls to 95, that would be fun. Like a Polk. If you told me I'm getting Jalen Polk and Roman Wilson somehow in the top 100, I am giddy. I am super giddy about that. Like that would, don't let me dream. But like just like something like that, yeah, sign me up in a heartbeat.
I'm with you on Polk. I've been there for quite a while. I think I have Baker 16 on mine. But the guy on day 3 that I keep coming back to is Cowling. And I don't care when, where, or otherwise, but
I understand it.
I like what he can do.
I mean, let's see here. Like we've got him in the top 25.
He is wide receiver 21 for me.
Okay.
But close. I mean, like we're edging close. Wide receiver 21, we're getting real close to a low round 3 grade there. Like that's a early round 4 I got on him still there. I got him. Him and Taj Washington are really close for me. And like similar type of players. I think Cowan gives you a little bit more vertical element. I think Taj probably plays a little bit tougher like at the catch point and stuff. But like still just similar guys that I think we're talking about double dipping here. You want to get an outside wide receiver or something like that in round 2, but maybe not a guy that you trust to do a little bit of the shallow stuff. It's short, intermediate, a little bit of yak, and you want to come back and get one of those kind of guys later on. Makes perfect sense to me. Like, right? I see where we're going, everything, all the pieces fit very nice and neat there, just like that. And so he's a guy that I like. I think his Senior Bowl I thought he was going to tear up the Senior Bowl, honestly. I really did think Cowling was going to look great down there. He seems like a guy to me that was going to run great one-on-one routes when you have no time limit and no rest of the defense. And it was just kind of ho-hum. It was fine. And like that was a little bit of a disappointing. I think that took out some of the air of the sales of like his kind of trajectory in the draft, so to speak.
I'm with you. The guy who stood out to me like in place of him was Jackson from Tulane. And I have them pretty closely graded.
Jaquan Jackson, yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I almost overinflated him too much because of the Senior Bowl, but do you guys have him? I have him at 22.
Oh, we have him.
He's pretty low for what the KCSN draft guide has. The primary grader was not as much of a fan of Jaquan Jackson. I think I'm a little bit higher on him than what he has. I think he's about 26 for me. So pretty close to those other guys. I think he was kind of low for like the overall KCSN draft guide. And I think for him too, it's big if you didn't get to see much of the Senior Bowl stuff and you just picked the wrong games to watch of Tulane, I think it can get pretty bad for him because like they did have other wide receivers and there is some like, clear strengths and weaknesses to his game. So I think that was probably just an unfortunate roll the dice of which games we're seeing.
You want to add, I'll tell you something that I've started to do is, and I'm not like necessarily taking it too far into my evaluation, but I think it's something that we need to start doing a little bit more because some teams just do this anyway. You need to watch their highlight clip before you as part of watching.
That's fair.
As part of watching your games. I'm not saying you overweight the highlights, but you at least need to see some of the high-end pieces of what they can do and some of those big moments that they've done. Because you may not always have the tape for those games, but you need to do it. You need to just go give yourself at least an idea of, because the truth of the matter is not every team scouts the way or watches tape the same way we do. Some teams like the top 30, the best 30 play approach, the best 15 play approach, because some teams believe that they'll hand the top 15 plays over to a positional coach because they want to see the high end things, the best moments of this player, because some teams' philosophy is I have the ability to get that out of him. And so, that's where you see some of the boomer bust type players. But that, like, I think some of these players, you just need to, like, I'm not saying like that needs to be your evaluation, but go watch their highlights. Just watch the highlights. And then at some point in your process, just add that into the mix. That doesn't mean you need to be changing guys a grade or two, but
Right.
there should be some context to understand what these guys are capable of doing outside of what games you have access to. So
That's fair.
I think it's something that needs to be a little bit more adopted as you're looking through these processes a little bit personally.
It's not a bad point, especially because I get to that point where I don't have tape on guys, and that's all I have access to because somebody loved them so much to go put a reel together that I can find, right?
Mm.
So that's a fair point, but I think I got to leave it till after because if I watch 3 games of you and you have 2 standout plays, and then I go watch highlights and there's 15 of them that everybody scrounged together, like I got to be able to still call you what you are. You know what I mean?
100%. It's
Yeah.
you've got to kind of determine how it's going to affect your personal process. But I do think there's a place for it, and it's either like I said before, after, wherever. There's value in it somewhere along in the process. I don't, I think it differs for everyone, but some teams do this. It's not that they're just watching highlight clips, but they do hand over the best 15 plays of guys because that's how some teams are treating this process. It's like, let me look at the high end for him so I understand the high end version of him. My job as a positional coach is I'm going to get that out of him at a more consistent level. Which I don't know how that works for some teams. That's not my preferred methodology, but like I'm sure it works for some, right?
Yeah. My question is how many of the top 10 teams are doing that?
Yeah. Seriously.
Yeah, like
I don't know.
I would like to know. I don't know enough about how each team goes about it, especially today, because maybe I knew 5 years ago, or maybe I knew 10 years ago. I had somebody in the building or whatever. Now it's a rodeo out there. I can't keep up.
Mm-hmm. For sure, man.
And with that, I just aged myself. So let's let's wrap it up. Like, just you guys have your guys, and I love that concept. I should steal that somehow. But like, drop dead number one guy that you feel they have to have in Kansas City next season. If you just had one and it was a sellout Ricky Williams kind of deal, who is it, Maddie? I
Wow.
love your expression.
Sell out? Like we're gonna trade the
like
whole
the
board?
entire draft. Yeah.
Does
Like,
it have to be
Okay, so-
reasonable?
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay. So we're clearly not. Yeah, if we don't have to be reasonable here, this opens up a lot of possibilities. I think everyone's gonna opt for the wide receivers, and like I would agree with any of the top 3 wide receivers. But give me, boy, if the Chiefs found a way to stumble their way into Byron Murphy from Texas and slap him next to or with Chris Jones, it would do something to me. It would move me in ways that I didn't think would be possible going into this. And he's a guy I expect him to go before we're even talking about the range for the Chiefs to trade up. But you want to tell me that for some reason he slides a little bit because people are not worried about the size or whatever it may be. And we're talking late teens, early 20s. And it's like, hey, Byron Murphy's still there. And we see the Chiefs little logo pop up for a trade up. You can bet your butt right now that I will be hoping it's for Byron Murphy because I just think he's that good.
I think there's no chance this happens.
Okay.
That's the whole point of this.
The Chiefs literally don't have the draft capital to like go get Marvin or something. But like the third receiver that falls of the top 3, whatever, if it's Roma Dunze, it's probably Roma Dunze, right? If Roma Dunze is at 9, I'd do a lot to try. I'd try. Like, and I'd try to go get him. And it's probably next year's first. It's first and a second this year. Next year's first, maybe a little bit more too, right? And like the Bears would have to be willing to move all the way back and move out of Roma Dunze and all that stuff. But like that's the first spot where it's like crazy, but it's not unrealistic that they could do it.
Yeah.
And how many times are you gonna fall into a Roma Dunze at pick 9? And so this is like he'd be such a good fit here in Kansas City. Like he's good moving multiple spots on the offense. He can play your X. He can be the future X. He can Z. He can F. He can move around and win in several different areas, in the slot, outside, you name it. He's a do-it-all, and he's competitive and he's tough. that's the kind of guy that the Chiefs have typically gravitated towards, right? And so I would move heaven and earth to try to get a blue chip wide receiver like Rome Odunze at, if it started at 9, I'd start at 9 and just see. I'd try. I'd see what happens. Maybe it's too much. Maybe they don't. No one's teams probably aren't interested in moving out. Honestly,
Yeah.
for like the Bears are gonna draft Rome Odunze if he's there. I'll be stunned if they don't, but I'd at least try because like that dude would be a perfect fit in Kansas City. And I mean, I don't have I don't think he's gonna bust. I think he'll be one of the best receivers in football if he's with Patrick Mahomes, like point blank. So go get crazy and go do it if possible.
I like it. What do you got, Dan?
It was Rome. It was Rome. I'm not the biggest on going to get up Joe Alt. Like I like Joe, but I have some questions, to be perfectly honest with you, about Joe Alt. And if I'm trading heaven and earth to go up to get someone, it's going to be for a player that, like Kent was talking about, is I'm almost guaranteed. I'm so convinced he's going to be a legitimate like top player in the NFL. Yes, go get him. And it's not even just his talent; it's the work ethic, it's the drive. He's like, I'm not very good 2 years ago at always coming down with the football in contested situations or battling. So what does he do? He goes and he puts on muscle. He goes, puts on weight. He gets better at it. And then that last year, he's maybe the best player in college football, best wide receiver at doing that, going and out muscling, out working players for it. That's the kind of attitude, work ethic that I want on this football team. And like I said, I personally have Olu as my number one. And if he's going to be falling, fine. And then that's fine. That's cool. But if I'm again trading heaven and earth, it's Byron Murphy or it's Rome Odunze. Those are the two guys in this draft class that it is for me, and they called it out.
I love when a plan comes together because as Maddie took my first guy, I was like, okay, I'll get to Odunze when everybody's done talking. And okay, so maybe we'll take my wide receiver 2, Marvin Harrison.
Hey, so are you neighbors guy then?
Nope.
Or is it Rome?
No,
Rome's
I've
one.
got
Rome
Rome
is
1.
all the way. Hey, you know what? I respect it. I get it. Like, hey, that's the dude embodies football character, and he's really good, and he's really athletic. He's checked every single box. That's why I don't think any team is gonna, if he's wide receiver 2 or like if he's wide receiver 2 in this draft, I'm not gonna be surprised. One, like again, I'll get it, but like I don't think I'd bet on it still, but like I'm not going to be surprised. Like I love him. So, and I think Maddie's been a Maddie guy for a minute. So Maddie was planting that flag in September, but
yeah,
of last year. Don't cut my Odunze.
Let me just pat myself on the back.
Don't cut my Washington Huskies hype short. It was there last year. It was just he clearly got better this year, right? And like that's the thing. He went from a wide receiver I like that like, hey, maybe the Chiefs should look at getting this guy too. Yeah. Oh, well, there's no chance they're going to get him. So that's disappointing.
See, the difference for me was in 22, it was like, oh, I like what he does, but I don't know that they'll throw enough 50-50 balls to really maximize him, right? This year that changed.
And it said Ben.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is like he was creating a lot more stuff. He created so much separation, down the field too, that it wasn't even 50-50. He was just flat out beating and stacking guys, right? So it's just like beyond that, like
too, man.
Yeah, he created a lot of separation up top. So I mean, yeah. I'd try. You're not going to run into that opportunity very often.
Well, I know what I'm doing in mock drafts tonight, folks.
How far up can we go?
Right? Everything.
Look, depending on how a team views a future first, you might be able to get up to you might be able to get up there a little bit. So
all I know is that Arthur Blank listened to Robert Kraft and said not to hire Bill Belichick. So you might be able to work something to get up in front of the Bears if you think you're feeling lucky.
I have a whole scenario in my head that never mind. We're not going to talk about lotus flowers. But I think that's probably my favorite thing right there. It's like the idea that an owner could be justified. And it brings me to one thing I was going to wrap up here in a second, but the thing that Brett Veach said the other day about, hey, we can move up, but I got to go get permission from the owner. That's a total smokescreen cop out, right? Because that's BS.
I
I don't.
I'm not
I mean,
saying
come
no.
on.
Nope. I'm not saying anything. Not going there.
Okay, and that's it, folks.
We will
Thanks for
not
being with us.
speak to it.
Watching myself. I haven't had enough whiskey.
Oh, the glass ain't full yet. It's okay. What do you think, Dan? Are there any takers?
If I'm being honest with, again, I don't know anything. So you guys, this is just my own a personal opinion. The person who he has to get permission for is Andy Reid. That's what I would think. It's not necessarily the owner, it's the guy he reports to, because we know that's kind of how that works. So if I had to say, it would be he has to get permission from Andy Reid, but
That always matters too, right? Like that is a piece of it. Let's just say I do believe there's probably a little permission required from Clark Hunt to do that. So I'll just leave it there.
Okay, I like it. That's all right. So everybody has to
Fair.
have a boss, right?
That's all you're getting.
fair.
Okay. Dang,
Someone
I
has
thought
to
if I
sign a
waited
check.
long enough.
Somebody has to
Yeah,
sign
right?
a check, right? Like
Somebody
at the end
has
of the
to
day,
take it.
someone signs a check.
Okay. Well, then we won't get our dream trade up scenarios. Although I'm going to work on them tonight. I think I'm going to enjoy that.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Have fun.
Last thoughts? Anything? I mean, maybe we can convince you. You can drink some more, Ken. It's fine.
No, I'm
Get you to
good.
say something.
I would just say buy our draft guides.
This is the-
Nailed
Both
it.
of
That's,
them.
that's it.
And
that's
I
all.
will, folks. We didn't do this tonight, but you'll have in the intro where you can get everything, especially from KCSN.
Hey, look, we waited an hour 20 to plug this, so no.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's all
No,
right.
we
It's
but
gonna
like
be-
this is the most fun part of the year for me. I love when we do this every year because we've all just got done pulling our hair out trying to put guides together, and we're always a little slap happy and stupid, and it's great. So this is always one of my favorite times of the entirety of the draft season. So yep, that's all.
Hey, back at you. I love seeing you guys. Thank
Yes.
you for doing it yet again. And get the slackers so everybody shows up next year.
We'll work
wrangle
on
that
it.
guy. See
We'll
what he
work on it.
That's it for us. Thanks for being with us, folks. We'll catch you next time and enjoy your draft. Watch KCSN live from everywhere that's cool. And you can watch us. We're going to be live from here. So it'll be a great time. Enjoy the streams. We'll catch you next time.